Good afternoon, and welcome to BroadCAST, the webinar interview series from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Center for Academic Success and Transition. I'm your host, Dan Hutt, and we are delighted to have with us today from Minneapolis, Minnesota, recording artist Brian Tighe. Brian, it's a great honor to have you here with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Dan. It's an
Not at
honor for
all.
me.
Well, it's our pleasure, absolutely. I think we'll start way back at the beginning, if we may. Uh, what was it like for you growing up in Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin, outside Milwaukee? And what was high school like for you in particular?
Yeah. Well, uh, really good school system there. I'm happy to say. But when I think about Whitefish Bay, the first thing I think I gotta talk about is my parents. My mom was a guitarist, singer, performer, and my dad was a writer. And so they were super supportive of all
Wow.
things artistic. And I was really into drawing and watercolor for most of my grade school and high school life. Um, I did start a band in high school and mostly like, oh, this is really fun. And I did have some late night reveries about writing lyrics and so there were glimmers of it at that time. Um, but I also got to mention my high school and grade school band teacher. I played saxophone in band.
I wondered if you were the sax player on a number of the Hang Ups tunes. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I also got to play saxophone with the legendary Jim Reese, a real Minnesota treasure here. Um, in fact, got to go to Japan with him in the band.
He
Um,
is he is among the Corda stable of artists. Am I right?
Absolutely right.
Yes.
Absolutely right. And yeah, meeting Jim early on in my time in the Minneapolis music scene was really powerful. But back to Whitefish Bay, I would listen to my mom practice. I'd sit at the bottom of the stairs near her practice room and just like I think I got at a really young age like this understanding of how much practice went into singing and being a good guitarist, a good vocalist, and performing. And I knew how nervous she would get before shows, but I also knew that she loved it. And really, what a talent! I wish you could hear some of her stuff.
Yeah,
And maybe sometime I can share that with you.
that would be great.
Yeah. There's footage for doing the Beatles song Blackbird that just
Wow,
knocks my socks off.
that's awesome.
But she actually had a TV show when she was pretty young called Singing Here Tonight in
Wow.
Milwaukee. Um, and I would even hear her on the radio sometimes.
Jeez.
There was this uh, car salesman named Ernie von Schledorn, and it was her voice on that radio ad. Ernie von Schledorn, Northwest Menominee Falls, and then he would say, "Whom do you know wants to buy a car?" And so I grew up with my mom. They called her Milwaukee's own Patsy Tighe, and so it was just really informative to be around that. And it wasn't something
Gosh.
that for me that would develop until later.
Okay.
I did get a really cool electric guitar, a Lotus, which was like a Strat copy. It was like cherry red. And that was super cool. I had a PV Bandit amp, and I think I would really actually annoy my sister because I would crank it when I suddenly understood how to create distortion. Huge moment, just
Yes.
cranking the pre, keeping the master down.
Yep.
It's like, oh, that's how you get that sound.
Yeah.
You know, I just got to say about Whitefish Bay. So as you can tell, I did have kind of an idyllic childhood.
Yeah.
And so I would call Whitefish Bay idyllic and sheltered, for better or for worse.
Right.
There's a reason it had the nickname White Folks Bay. We're talking almost no diversity. So it wasn't until I moved to Minneapolis that the world kind of opened up to me more. Among so many art students, so many musicians, just in getting dropped into like an incredible music scene, kind of the Minneapolis sound.
Yes.
Hard rock.
How old were you when you first discovered that you had a knack for music?
Yeah, it was like glimmers of it, like I said, in high school. But I think one big moment for me was when part of my college career, I did an abroad program to New York City, and this was my time to really get serious about visual art. Going to New York, working in a studio, also working as an artist assistant.
Yeah.
And really seeing the gallery scene firsthand. And I won't lie, it was difficult.
Yeah.
It was I was like spending a lot of time writing songs in my little room at the YMCA where we stayed, kind of like not even wanting to go down to the studio.
Yeah.
This is my time right now. And the songwriting just came so naturally to me. And I was missing my bandmates in Minneapolis. I was missing practicing with them and sharing songs with them. And so my bandmate, Jeff Kearns, who was there from the beginning in the Hang-Ups and still is, he likes to refer to a song that I wrote in New York as my first good song. And it was called Wishing I Was on a Plane. And it was literally just singing about being in this tiny room in these four walls, wishing I was on a plane, being back home with them in the basement, practicing, drinking tea from peanut butter jars, sitting in his kitchen, eating all his food, and it just, it was the first song that felt super real for me. Like this is coming from somewhere deep inside me.
Yeah.
I mean it.
Right. How did you do in New York as far as dealing with New York? I mean, for me, I'm a real Midwestern guy, and I kind of butt heads a little bit with New York from time to time. Was that true for you, or perhaps it was the opposite?
Yeah, it's like I truly am a Midwestern guy, like you. But I also have that reverence for the New York artists, the New York musicians, the scene, and the same with LA. So part of me is so reverent and awestruck by those scenes in particular that it's like, oh, if I'm going there, it's a big deal. I'm like, on my game. And so it's a little of both,
Okay,
it's
okay.
like, but the New York art gallery scene was it just felt like, wow, this is what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
I want to pursue this career, and it sounds really tough.
yeah.
And plus, I was, I mean, an amazing thing about the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, where I went to school for college, was they they insisted that you try so many different mediums from the beginning, and it was really expansive for me. I mean, I learned how to weld metal and make huge
Jeez.
metal sculptures, and and that it was like we made films, we made photographs, um,
Gosh,
all
that sounds
before.
idyllic.
Yeah, I mean, again, idyllic is just a great word for it. Um, and meeting my fellow students was so powerful.
Yeah.
It's like in high school, I was the odd man out. I was like, you know, who else is really into this? And there was a girl that I had a huge crush on who went to MCAD, also an amazing artist. And
Okay.
so she was ahead of me a grade, and I was able to visit the school and check it out and get to know the campus and I pretty much fell in love with the scene right away.
Yeah.
And it was pretty early on that I met Jeff Kearns,
Okay.
my original Hang Ups bandmate, and Stephen
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
later. Um,
Were you guys in classes together by chance?
yeah,
Oh man.
this, this was the thing, and I came in thinking like I'm like a hot artist. I'm like, oh, my drawing skills are like, and then I'd see him put his drawing up on the wall, and it's just like, oh, okay, that's like what a real artist does. I mean, Jeff's visual art skills, kind of blew me away. So I was looking up to him right off the bat. Um, we were also that was our basic drawing class with an amazing teacher named Judith Rude, who just was like, no, you're starting over from square one. I don't care how good you are at like photorealism or, super intricate details. Forget all that. You've got to see and draw the shapes you're looking at. Just get the proportions, get the shapes, get the lines, get the relationships between the shapes. And she would come up to your drawing and just like put these huge lines. No, here's the perspective. Here's where it should be. And she'd erase stuff, and like, it was so good for me.
Wow.
It was like back to basics, really needed it. And
Yeah.
so she's one of those teachers that I'll never forget. And
Now,
yeah.
I think of the first time that I ever saw you and Jeff playing, and I remember specifically, I mean, I loved the Hang-Ups already, but you guys launched into a version of the Byrds' You Ain't Going Nowhere.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I'm a
Mm.
big Byrds fan, big Dylan fan, but that was a game changer for me. And my own band for the next 10 years did that same cover because we had heard
Nice.
you guys do it so much.
Nice.
Now, Steven Ittner seems
Mm.
like a real character to me. Is that true? I love
Gotcha.
what he's doing in Go-Kart, and those videos are so funny.
Yeah.
What an
Yes.
interesting group of guys.
Yeah. I mean, it was life changing.
Yeah.
Like, number one, I mean, each of them individually, changed my life, but the three of us really came together.
Unstoppable.
We And originally, we were playing with a drummer named Matt, who eventually moved to St. Louis.
Okay.
Um, and so all four of us were actually contributing songs.
Okay.
Um, but eventually Matt moved to St. Louis, and Stephen blew me away with his drumming skills.
Yeah.
Apparently he had been playing jazz with his dad, who's a trumpet player. And so he brought this jazzy swing feel to what we were doing, a more alternative rock pop
Yeah.
thing, and it was just a lovely feeling. It was an unusual feeling to play with that, and then his vocal harmonies that he was very good at doing while drumming just added so much. It lifted the songs.
Stevens, I think he's the writer of the song, but he's certainly the vocalist. Even now, on the
Oh,
first Owls record,
yes,
sends shivers up my spine. One of the
yes,
great songs to come out of Minneapolis.
yes. Um, I mean, he sometimes he channels John Lennon like
Exactly.
nobody else I've seen.
Unbelievable.
His piano skills are really good too. He's of course playing piano on that song.
Yeah.
Actually, that was me drumming because he had his
Wow.
hands full playing the piano. I did build some drum skills over the years,
Hmm.
and yeah, with the Owls, then getting to add male and female harmonies with him was such a treat.
Oh,
Um,
it's phenomenal.
and I was so glad that we were able to that he agreed to do that song.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and he's, as you can imagine, he's just a killer songwriter.
Hmm.
Um, so much unreleased material that
Oh,
I'm really hoping that Corda could do just a full length, maybe a double album. I mean,
yes.
triple album, with all the amazing work he's done.
I can only
That is
imagine.
not, yeah, and so I do encourage him, and he he had he's a father, and he I think he does deal with some health issues now. So he
Hmm.
has kind of a limit. What he's told me is that he seems to have this limited window of time that his voice is even good enough
Okay.
to sing. And so I've had to kind of move on without
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
as a member of the Hangups.
Okay.
Um, Although we share songs, and he gives
Sure.
me valuable feedback, and he'll every once in a while send me a musical idea, a guitar thing, which almost always is like a keeper, and
Yeah.
and he'll send me his songs that he's working on,
Okay. Okay.
and he and I both are really working hard, learning now the art of mixing,
Okay.
which is, as you probably know, a whole world unto itself. Um, and I've gotten to the point where I know what I like. I know how I want my songs to sound. It's not always easy to get there, but I'm probably going to have an easier time getting there myself.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and maybe a kind of thing like where it's like I get it 85% of the way, and then say to a producer, mixer, engineer, like, can you get me the rest of the way there?
Yeah.
Um, and so he's in the same boat.
Okay.
And I think he's doing, really great productions of his own home recorded material, but I know
Yes.
he wants to take it to a higher level before he releases
I sure hope
more
he
of it.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Back to art school for a moment, if we may.
Hmm.
Lori and I were just talking earlier this morning about how the art school route is so novel. We both work in higher ed, and you see all the time students that do the traditional four-year college route. Other students
Mhm.
eschew that for community college, but we don't
Mhm.
hear so much about students going to art school. And that seems like such a lucrative pathway. It seems
Mm.
like it sure paid off for you. Is that how you feel about it?
It really is.
Okay.
Maybe not as much in terms of making money,
Yeah.
but in terms of really finding what I love, like a
Yes.
rigorous um, work through of trying so many different things. Um, and, because I had passion for all of them, I
Hmm.
went there thinking I would be a graphic designer or an illustrator, something more sensible
Okay.
that
Okay.
you could make money. And in that senior year of high school, I was creating a lot of work that I thought might go create a good portfolio for
Okay.
that type of work, and it did help me very much in even getting some scholarships and things like that. And you know, it was a time when going to college was so much less expensive, and I wasn't being saddled with crippling debt. I mean,
Right. Right.
some debt, but I know that students these days often are being saddled with so much debt.
Yeah.
And I actually taught songwriting at the McNally Smith College of Music here for a couple of years. The college is no longer, sadly, but and it was wonderful. I mean, so many talented students. Um,
Did they all know you from the local
I
scene?
mean, a lot of them, we know each other. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of them are like, you know, a huge part of the scene now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of them are like jack of all trades in
Okay.
music. And this is something that um, I think became a more realistic pathway for a lot of because it's like, oh my God, there's so many talented singers, like just in my
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah.
So many talented songwriters, so many talented musicians, and you can make a go of it, you know, playing gigs, maybe supporting other artists, um, working in the recording studio. Maybe you get handy at production work. A lot of these people were producer types,
Yeah.
engineers, and a lot of the time it was like you're working on all these different skills, including music business classes,
Yeah.
and you could come out. Yes, you're saddled with some debt, but you can, if you're good, you can make it work.
Yeah.
Getting that, getting the level of popularity that you need to make a living as a singer songwriter solely is tough. That
Yeah.
that is, and there's so much luck involved. Um, like I say, because there are just so many talented people out there.
Right. Right.
Um, One of the cool things I've been able to do over the years is be the guitarist for a really talented local singer songwriter named Jeremy Messersmith.
Oh, yes.
And so and he's someone who has gone that path.
Yeah.
He plays a lot of house shows
Yeah.
where that's kind of his bread and butter.
Okay.
And the first record that I worked on with him, uh, it was essentially a self-released record that he did called "The Reluctant Graveyard,"
Uh-huh.
and that kind of blew up, especially locally. And so, he's doing it. It's a
Yeah.
challenge, but he's doing it. For me, I feel like I've found a happy medium.
Okay.
I have a sort of permanent part-time position at our museum called the Minneapolis Institute of Art, where I do AV work about 20 hours a week average.
Okay.
Um, and so I love it. There's great artists coming in where I will do the AV for the lectures, I'll video record, do lighting, do sound, and get to witness lots of cool events.
Yeah.
Bands will come in, we'll do the sound for them.
Right.
So for me to take the pressure off of, solely earning that income as a singer-songwriter was a good move,
Okay.
so that
Okay.
I can make some money at it,
Right.
make some money at recording other people, make some money at being musicians for other people, playing shows, like the New Standards holiday show. Every holiday season
Yes.
is huge here, and so and I get to connect with John Munson in that, and
I just emailed with John yesterday, in
oh,
fact.
good,
Yeah, what a
good,
guy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You mentioned earlier how much your mother rehearsed so
mm.
tenaciously. Um, are a couple questions? Do you have formal training as a musician, and are you someone that rehearses regularly? It makes a layperson like me, when I see the greatness of the Hang-Ups or the Owls, I think to myself, are they just rehearsing night and day? How does that work?
Well, um, when we have a show, we
Uh-huh.
do rehearse a lot.
Okay.
Um, but in between, it's more like songwriting. I mean, I am constantly playing guitar, so in a sense, I'm rehearsing.
Hmm.
But so much of that time is spent sort of searching
Sure.
for vocal melodies and chord progressions and words. Um, and then it's sort of like a shift, and it's like, oh, we have a show, and
Hmm.
then it's the regular practicing. Um, so I'm always playing. Sometimes, again, like I said, playing with other people,
Hmm.
practicing for a Messersmith show where it's like, in that band we didn't practice very often, so it was like practice to the recordings,
Okay.
really get those reps in.
Right.
So I would say yes, a lot of practicing, but it's not locked in.
Okay. Okay.
And um, yeah,
Do do your bandmates also have kind of side hustles that they embrace to make ends meet? And would you share some of that? I'd like to know what Jeff and I think
yeah,
does Steven run a comic book store?
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
see it from the video. He
Yeah,
sees Doc. That just seems awesome.
yeah. Comic Book College, and he is an amazing comic book illustrator.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, his again. I hope more of this will be put out there, because I mean, his drawings are really a step above most everything else you see.
Yeah.
Great sense of humor, and so yes, working at the comic book college
Yeah.
is a way that he earns money.
How
Uh,
about Jeff and your
yeah,
bandmates in the Owls?
yeah, yeah. So Jeff, you'll get a kick out of this. He and I work together at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. So we do a lot of these lectures together,
Okay.
or trade shifts. And so I love that I have that point of contact with him.
Yes.
We have that working relationship in the museum as well as bandmates.
Okay.
And
And
so
Allison and Maria, do they have
yeah,
jobs
yeah.
as well?
Right. So Allison, my wife, she does some cool video editing for people. She does some performing on other people's work.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and then Maria, um, she's in actually some religious studies right now, and she may be a pastor or a chaplain in the coming
Okay.
years.
All right.
And so she's been very serious about her school and working for a religious organization, and so
Mm-hmm.
um, that's what she's been doing. My bandmate Aaron works in the library, uh,
Okay.
and Chadwick, our Hangups drummer, is a very accomplished video editor. Um,
Okay.
he's done a lot of shows for like 2020 and some music videos and so yeah, quite a variety there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I mean, as we've been discussing, it's tough to make a living as an artist, and the music industry is notoriously cutthroat. I'm curious to know what your personal measure of success therein has been over time. And at times, has it ever become so challenging that you felt like quitting? And how did you persevere, if so?
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I feel like there's always been like a next thing that
Okay.
maybe if, at a certain point, the hangups were approaching burnout. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, the 90s were just an amazing decade for us. Um, and I would say, which sort of, in a way, the climax of it was like recording with Mitch Easter and Don Dixon.
Yes.
And
At
it
the
was like,
Fidelatorium, is that right?
yes, yes,
Wow.
yeah,
That must have been exhilarating. I've got a lot of their records.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a dream come true.
Yeah.
I remember we would fly, do regular flights out to North Carolina to work at the Fidelatorium, and then at Reflection for mixing.
Uh-huh.
And on one of the flights home, there's a lot of turbulence, and I was like, just please let me finish this record. I have to finish this record. Um, and unfortunately, we were able to. Um, so, and we can come back to that experience, but um, we were getting a huge recording budget. They were putting us on the road 2 years straight. More than 100 gigs a year, going all around the country. Um, and it really felt like, wow, this might be it. And it didn't. It just didn't quite. We couldn't quite break through to that national success. I mean, we
Uh-huh.
had some great things happen, some songs and movies and TV shows, but we we got to the point where it was like, this doesn't really make sense for us to be on this major label, which was Restless at the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And I talked to them, and they were nice enough just to let us go. They,
Wow.
you know, um, and like I say, there would always be a next thing, though. Uh,
Yeah.
we we hooked up with a guy named Brad Kern.
Yes. I know
Um,
that name from Trip Shakespeare.
okay, yes, he was their
Yeah.
producer, sound man extraordinaire,
Yeah. Yep.
and through Trip Shakespeare, through Semisonic, um, we connected with him, and he offered to produce our next record. At the same time, an amazing guy named John Cooker, who had a studio called Seedy Underbelly.
Yes.
John, rest in peace. He's no longer with us, but he left a huge mark on the music community.
Yes.
Um, and he basically let us do an entire record on spec with Brad and um, Pete Yorn and Rami from the Wallflowers started a label,
Trampoline Records.
Trampoline Records,
Yes.
and they asked the Hang-Ups
Yeah.
to do a record with them. And so it was like, even after kind of the like, we couldn't quite reach it, we still had this amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
And at that point, we knew that we were probably keeping it at a little more manageable level. That we
Okay.
weren't going to be driving all around the country
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
that point.
Did you
But
enjoy that, being on tour like that so heavily?
oh
You did.
yes, I
Yeah, you
mean
did.
it was, and I mean the guy traveling with those guys again, when it's your friends, when it's your
Yeah.
closest friends, it's a wonderful experience. Not all the time. There were some
Sure.
tough gigs, and there were some moments of real questioning. Some some places we end up where it was like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to do this gig. We're like opening for a heavy metal band. The audience is going to hate us. I'm like on the phone with the booking agent. Can we please not do this show? And he's like, no, you have to do it. And, so, it just, there were times like that. But then there were times like we got to play the Viper Room in Los Angeles. And that was where the record label was. We got tons of press, packed house, playing our new record with like the most amazing live mics. I mean, it was like we were in a recording studio on stage,
Wow.
and it just sounding fantastic, and we've been practicing so much because we were playing gigs every night.
Yeah.
So some incredible highs along with the lows.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but
That's
honestly,
just
making a
awesome.
living at it was just not totally feasible when the
Right.
label's like, we can't give you any more tour support.
Right. Right. Jeez. Now you mentioned always feeling like there was a next thing coming
Yeah.
up, and I'm curious about which side you fall on in regard to the next thing. Producing art that caters to your audience that loves you, or producing art that speaks mostly to your own desires, and then hoping that that audience will come along with you. Or is there a middle ground therein? How do you see it?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to admit, I fall on the side of producing for myself.
Good
I
for you.
just and maybe you know uh, maybe if I'd been a little more on the other side, maybe I would have figured something out that would uh, cut through more. But I just have to do it for myself. And I think this goes along with working part time at the museum, where it's like I can make enough money to get by doing that, and if I don't have to like earn a ton of money as a singer songwriter, it grants me more freedom, I think.
Sure. I think that's right. That's a good point. Absolutely. And it's the Beatles way too, right? They always wrote for themselves, and the audience will either come along with us or they won't.
Right. I
Uh,
mean, there might have been moments, with the White Album or Magical Mystery Tour where, maybe the critics weren't totally getting behind them.
that's
Of
right.
course, they always had an incredible audience, um,
Yes.
and just produced the most amazing body of work
Right.
imaginable.
Absolutely. Now, I mentioned that I think I have the entire Hang-Ups in Al's catalog, and amongst those things is one 7-inch record, and the rest are CDs. I'm wondering what your disposition is to music in material form. And I know there's a new Hang-Ups record coming out. Will that be on CD or vinyl, or how will that go?
Yeah. Oh, I would love to make full length vinyl.
Hmm.
I've never done that. We've
Okay.
made 7 inches, the Starfolk the hang-ups, but I've never done the full length record. So I would love our new record to be on vinyl, and I
Is
think
that
it'll
it?
happen. I
Wow.
can't promise that, but I really want to make that happen. We've also talked a lot about re-releasing "So We Go" on vinyl,
Okay.
and I would really like to make that happen too. And it's I'm not the best project manager, so I'm hoping that I can get some help with that. But
Okay.
you know, we will we'll see how that goes. But
Right. Right.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
have a pretty extensive home recording setup where
yes,
you work from? And I'm curious what your platform is. Is it
yeah,
Tape or Logic Pro or Pro Tools or
yes. Pro Tools.
okay.
That is what Brad Kern, who I mentioned before, that was what Brad. Well, Brad used a combination of 24 track tape and Pro Tools.
Okay.
Um, Also, Pro Tools, I think, is the one that most mimics sort of working on tape, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Um, so Brad Kern, I was always watching uh, working on Pro Tools because I continued working with him through the Owls,
Okay.
and so he would work alone, and then we would get together, and I would watch him working that that program, and then eventually I was able to purchase a Mac and like a 1176 compressor, a Vintech preamp, a Neumann microphone, and
Wow.
really get set up. Um, and then Brad was able to teach me along the way. Um, yeah, Pro Tools has been the thing for me.
Yeah.
And right now I have an Apollo Universal Audio uh, uh, interface that I
Wow.
really like.
Got some great gear.
Yeah, all of those Universal Audio plugins are really powerful, and even kind of take away the need for some fancy preamps and things like that. So I have a Eden Traveler uh, bass amplifier head that's part of my system here, so I can demo out bass, and I have a Microtech Gaffel large diaphragm microphone that I really love, um,
I
and
bet that's dreamy.
yeah, yeah. It was like finally finding a microphone that was like not crazy expensive,
Yeah.
that really worked for my voice and for Allison's and for Maria's. Um, and so that was a big piece of the puzzle. I have to mention another friend and incredible musician um, named David Shelzel, and he fronts a band called The Ocean Blue,
Yes.
um, and who I also perform with. Um, but he really took me under his wing on this whole journey of learning how to mix my own recordings. And so I wanted to match his system.
Yeah.
That was why I got into the Universal Audio equipment and the studio monitors, the Focals, that really give you. It's not necessarily the most flattering sound, but they're really telling you what's there. So if
Yeah.
it needs more sparkle, you have to give it more sparkle.
That sounds like what you want out of a monitor. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So it was a kind of a game changer when I got those.
Yeah.
Um, and David's been mixing a lot of his own stuff for quite a while, and he's worked in with many producers, and so he has a lot of experience under his belt. So he's been a really good teacher for me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So that those are the elements of my studio, and then a lot of my trusty guitars, Stratocaster, Gibson. Um, uh, those are some of my favorites,
Yeah,
and so that's made it very easy to work at home.
yeah,
And
that's awesome.
yeah, I'm also curious about the system called Luna, that is sort of the universal audio answer to Pro Tools.
Yeah.
So I have that on another computer, and I'm slowly getting to know that as well.
Okay, very good. It sounds like you've got a tremendous setup. Now, you mentioned the semisonic guys a bit ago,
Yeah.
and we've had the pleasure of having each of those guys on broadcast.
Yeah.
And Dan and I talked about, Dan Wilson and I spoke when he was on about his approach to songwriting. And Dan has a very systematic, routine schedule that he goes by with his songwriting. And his brother Matt, as you may know,
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily work that way. It's Matt might wait more for inspiration to strike as opposed to trying to contrive it in some way. And neither approach is right or wrong, right? Of course, but I'm wondering what side you might fall on in that way. Do you write towards inspiration, or does inspiration need to come to you?
Yeah. I am probably more on the Matt Wilson
Me
side of things.
too. Me too.
I do, as I mentioned before, really regularly play guitar and try to open myself to what will come. And it can be a little tricky. Um, One thing I'll do, I have some friends who every once in a while will do a month of what we call song a day, where we have to create one song a day and share it in some form. Um, and what I love about that was like taking a song from start to finish, even if it's no good, where you sort of have to finish at least, maybe a couple verses and a chorus, um, where, my nature would be to not start writing lyrics in earnest on a song until I have a chord progression and a vocal melody that really works for me, that I'm really excited about.
Okay.
Um, and So the song a day work, um, after doing a month here, a month there of that, has gotten me more in a place where I'll incorporate the lyric writing earlier,
Hmm.
and maybe get like some of these pieces that I might be excited about early on, bring them more to life. Um, and that way it's a little easier to return to them and maybe know what to do.
Sure.
Um, so, um, yeah, I admire both of those guys so much.
Right. Are you and Matt friends? You've toured a number of
Yeah.
times before.
We are friends. We don't see each other that often, but I would say that we're friends.
Hmm.
Whenever we do see each other, it's a hug, and feel like we admire each other and each other's songwriting and singing, and
Well, when I think of the heavyweights on the Minneapolis scene, I think of yourself and Matt and John Munson and people like that. So
mm, mm,
that's just great. Are there artists out there, Brian, that you would like to
mm,
collaborate with at this point?
man. Yeah, I mean,
You've
talking
got you've got a pretty
fantasy
good
world.
setup now. You're working with a number of great artists, but there are
Yeah.
people out there that you would aspire to work with?
Yeah, I mean, again, like if it's just sort of like fantasy level, guys like Johnny Greenwood and Tom York, and Nigel Godrich, I mean, I just feel like both Radiohead and The Smile, um, what they're doing is so inspiring in terms of arrangement and production. I just think it would be so exciting to work with any of
Oh,
them.
I think we lost you, Brian.
Oh, shoot. Okay,
It
can you
froze
hear
up.
me? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Lori,
Um,
are you there?
I can still hear everything. So
okay, Lori, if you can hear me still, do you think I should try and do the link again?
I don't think so. Dan, are you still there?
Okay, Lori, I
I
don't hear
think,
Dan.
yep, I think it might actually have been Dan that froze. Give
Oh, okay.
me, give me 1 second. Sometimes if he, like if it was a Wi-Fi issue, he might pop right back in.
Gotcha.
There we go. Okay, we can see you but not hear you, Dan.
How about now?
Perfect.
Brian,
I
can
can
you
hear
see
you.
now? Can you see this?
I
Just
can't I
just
can't
audio.
see just
Okay.
audio, but
Okay.
if you can hear me and see me,
Yes.
keep going.
That's
Yeah.
Yep, and I
great.
can
Sorry.
hear and see you both. So I would say
Oh,
go ahead
Yes.
and
good.
continue.
Okay, good.
Yep.
You were saying about the working with the Radiohead guys. Would you be able to hold it together if you were with those guys? I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm easily impressed by celebrity. I don't think I could probably hold it together with you that way. But what's your disposition accordingly?
Well, you know, I would just be so opportunistic. Like, I gotta make the most of this,
Yeah.
even if I am completely starstruck. Um, so I venture to say I would do okay, uh,
Okay.
but I could be terribly wrong.
A couple of weeks ago, we were fortunate enough to have singer Inara George of the Bird and the Bee
Ooh,
on with us, and she talked about being asked to sing on a Paul McCartney record, and that
oh,
she
wow.
went in, completely unnerved, and then figured out he's just a nice guy, and he's somebody's dad and somebody's
Yeah,
grandpa.
yeah,
And it just made everything natural again. I don't know if I could make that adjustment though.
right, right. That's so amazing. I mean, I you mentioned Paul McCartney. He does just seem like such a nice guy, truly.
Yeah, yeah,
That, I might be more intimidated by the Radiohead guys,
yeah.
because they seem pretty moody and really cool. And so Paul McCartney would be amazing to work with. I just, I just revere him so much.
Yes,
His
yes.
melody writing, his vocals, and just that he worked with John Lennon. Um, how that pair came together is just such a miracle.
Sure is.
uh,
It sure is.
Ray Davies would be another person I would just be so incredibly thrilled to work with. Ray Davies
You
of the
bet.
Kinks.
You
Um,
bet.
yeah, yeah.
Brian, I'm curious to know your disposition towards the necessary self-promotion
Mm,
aspect of
mm.
being an artist. I always think that kind of thing is difficult for a humble Nebraskan. It always has been for me, at least. How do you work with that? What's your disposition towards social media and things like that?
Yeah, Dan, it's so hard. I
Okay.
really struggle with it. But um, if I can sort of make it creative,
Yes.
like if I can get into some interesting video editing and get that going for Instagram, make an interesting poster for a show, work with uh, Photoshop, Illustrator. If I can put my creativity into it, that's a real way in for me.
Yes.
But it's really intimidating. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, it's and my wife and I were just talking about this, and she has a really good point of view on it. Instead of looking at it as like asking for attention, maybe look at it as, what do I want to give? Even like in the realm of social media, what do I want to give? And that becomes so much more approachable for me
It
as
sure does.
opposed
What
to
a
like,
refreshing perspective.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
never thought about it like that.
yeah. I mean, Allison is so great for perspective shifts for me, and
Yeah.
so she and I work together on a lot of the promotional stuff.
Okay.
That is difficult for both of us,
Yeah.
but we have some of the same skills in video editing, um, and she's much better with wording um, the posts
Hmm.
and promotional material. I have more, again, visual arts skills,
Yeah.
so we can kind of combine some of that stuff and make it easier.
What a great opportunity. That's terrific.
Hmm.
Now, I'm curious, Brian. I mentioned to you earlier, we've crossed paths a couple of times over the years when you've ventured down to Lincoln, Nebraska. Uh, what went through your mind when you got this invite from the U of Nebraska? You thought, what's going on
Yeah,
with this?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, of course, my mind goes right back to Duffy's,
Yes.
and really some some good shows there. It's such a good feeling when you get that far out of town, and there's people that actually come to see you, and you
Yes.
know, playing that whole tour with Matt Wilson was such a pleasure. Uh,
Yeah.
and there was I always think of this restaurant, or well, maybe, like it was a burrito place across the street, and they claimed to make burritos as big as your head. You know what I'm talking
I
about?
do. I do.
Yeah. Okay. And is that still there?
I think it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
And they were amazing burritos.
Yes. That is funny.
Yeah.
Uh, Brian, I wonder if you'd take us into your library at home.
Yeah.
Do you have a big vinyl record collection? What are your tastes in reading? Do you read more fiction or nonfiction,
Mm.
etc.?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to admit, I do not have a large vinyl collection.
Okay, that's what John Munson said too. And when I think of you guys, I just think of you and John and Dan and Matt as being in your living rooms, and you've got these vintage hi-fi systems and whole walls of vinyl. And John
Right.
said that's not really the case. It's all in Dan's head.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm somebody that still has a CD player in my car. And I
Yeah,
love cracking open the old CDs. Ooh, I haven't heard this in a long time, and
you
just
bet.
driving and listening, maybe go on a road trip, listen, listen, listen. Um, I gotta tell you, I love Spotify, and I know that might make some people mad, but I've just found so many great artists, so many great new
Yeah,
artists through Spotify that I love it, and I see that my own music is able to have a new life on Spotify. We just recently got So We Go, He's After Me, and Coming Through, some early albums of the Hangups
yeah,
up there finally, and the listenership just shot up, and so it people make playlists and share songs, and that
yeah.
draws more people. So I know that they don't pay the artists enough, and that's a shame, and that should change.
Hmm.
But maybe for an artist at my level, just to get more exposure like that,
You
it's
bet.
more like getting radio airplay. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. And
so
people making playlists and sharing them, is that so different from making mixtapes like we
yeah,
did back in our day, you know?
yeah, exactly. Except the big difference is that it's public.
Yeah.
Like you could have 300, 400 people listen to your playlist,
Hmm.
and find out about the Hang-Ups song Sleepy or something like that,
Yeah, yeah.
And one thing that it shows you in your Spotify uh, artist page is like, oh, it appears on, and here's all these different playlists that
That
people
is
made,
cool.
and so I do appreciate that about
You bet.
Spotify. And honestly, the convenience of just having it on my phone,
Yeah.
popping some nice headphones on. um, getting alerted when artists that you love are putting something new out. For me, like Adrian Lenker's new album, I've just started listening to it, but I'm just so excited to have that. Jessica Pratt,
Uh-huh.
you know, the Smile, as I mentioned, the Radiohead guys, like this new stuff they're doing is awesome. So, um, I, uh, the digital world is working okay for me.
Sure, and it's
Um,
undeniably
yeah,
convenient as you
right.
indicate. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I
Um,
guess the mass of vinyl too, the weight of
yeah,
all that material can be a bit much.
you bet. Absolutely. Well, we've got a new Hang-Ups record coming in June, I heard,
Oh gosh,
possibly.
I now fall
Okay.
is my optimistic hope, um,
Okay.
and so that's what I'm working towards. I hope I can make that happen.
Yeah.
Again, this journey with mixing uh, is a challenge, uh,
Yes.
but I think it's paying off.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I'm, we are very excited about this new material we recorded at the Pachyderm studio
Yes.
here. We do our basics in the studio, bring it all home on hard drives, get it into our home studios, and work from there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
So,
good. Brian, I've gotten through about a third of the questions that I wanted to
yeah,
ask you. We're out of time. I think I could talk with you for the rest of the afternoon. Maybe
absolutely.
sometime I could buy you a cup of coffee or something,
Oh,
if I
yes.
venture to Minneapolis. But
Please do.
I want to tell you what truly an honor it's been to have you
Mm.
on our program. I've been a major fan for many, many years, and I just want to express to you and your bandmates on Corda what an inspiration
Mm.
you are to a young musician. I like to think of myself as a young musician, at least
Yeah.
at this point, but just over the years, what tremendous inspiration you've been for me personally. So it's just a tremendous honor to have been able to speak with you today, and I really appreciate your graciousness in joining us.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I am equally honored. I appreciate it so much. And let's have that cup of coffee together.
That's a deal, partner. Thank you so much again, and I'm wishing you all the best going forward.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.